Good morning and welcome back to Bald Feather Bets, guys. We will run through our plays for College Ball Saturday, a small slate today for us, and then get on out of here. First, please make sure you're subscribed to the channel, notifications on, so you know when we post. Posted every single one of these plays throughout the week this week, and not all of them are still available at that same line. Just interact with the content, please. Like, share, comment on the video. Never charge for these picks, just want to keep growing the channel. Having a great year this year for you guys, and just want to keep growing that community. So we are on 4 plays today. We'll start it out with the with the early window. We have Missouri +8 for 5 units against Oklahoma. If you're late on this one, you can, it's weird, you can get 5.5 or you can get 6.5 at major books. You cannot get 6 unless you go to a non-major. But that's really funny that it's at 5.5 and 6.5 with no one touching 6. We took this at 8 before Prebula was confirmed, and that's one of the reasons that we took it. We like Prebula in this game here because he's at about a 71% completion percentage, and that's going to be big going up against the Oklahoma defense, who will pose a lot more of a run stoppage to Hardy than he got last week when he ran for over 300 yards. So I think we all know Oklahoma has a very formidable run defense. They are missing our Mason Thomas again, but obviously they didn't matter too much for him against Oklahoma, where they got the win. I think you're good to take this to anything down to 6 with knowing that Prebula's playing. Again, you're talking about a completion percentage that's about 71% for him and about mid-50s, high 50s on the backup. So I think that's fine then to go, even though you're crossing the key number as 7. I think you're fine then to go down to 6. You need that against this Oklahoma defense because, like I said, they will have multiple times where they stop Hardy for a 1-yard gain, a 1-yard loss, a 2-yard gain at most, and then you're going to be in a passing situation, and you really need to be accurate against this Oklahoma defense. Like the spot for Missouri quite a bit, actually. Do not like the spot for Oklahoma. We talked about it a little bit in our college football playoff video. There is a higher likelihood that Oklahoma loses one of the two. Think about it in the sense of a parlay. Oklahoma win against Missouri, Oklahoma win against LSU. There's a highly likelihood that Oklahoma loses one of those games outright, then wins them both. It ends up 9-3. With the parity that you've seen, especially in the SEC this year, and just throughout college football, like, we'll probably be on LSU as a dog next week if Oklahoma wins this one, right? It's just how these things tend to go. Things don't go chalk, and so we like Missouri here plus the 8 for 5 units. You can still get 6.5 if you're only playing at major books. You can get 6s if you're at non-major. I don't think you should wait, and I don't think waiting is going to give you a 7. If you want to, you can, but you may miss your opportunity at 6 and 6.5, and may end up at 5.5. If you drop below 6, I would drop the unit amount some. Yeah. Okay. So then in the afternoon slate, hopefully you guys got this one last night because it did exactly what I told you it would do. So we have Oregon -10 for 5 units against USC. Talk about the line a little bit, and then we'll talk about why. So the line is now at 10.5 at every major book. This morning there were still a few 10s on non-majors. They were going away quickly. Everyone seems to be settling in at 10.5 on this one. Last night when we gave this out, we said get this one now. If you want to wait, you can, but I think you're more likely to lose your opportunity at 10s than you are to get a 9.5 again. And quite honestly, I've told you guys before, don't ever care about a half point that's taking you off of a push. That's very dumb, actually. Like, don't not take a 3 because you're waiting on a 3.5, or don't not take a 3 because you're waiting on a 2.5. In this situation, don't not take a 10 because you're waiting on a 9.5. The only time you can be concerned about the half point is when it gives you a loss, not if it takes, like, not if it gives you an even number that gives you a push. Or a whole number, not an even number, sorry. So hopefully you guys got it last night. I think you're fine to take this one to 11, but I wouldn't go much further than 11. If you're going to go much further than 11, then drop the unit amount. So Oregon minus 10 for 5 units. We're looking at a couple of things here. So Oregon has statistically the number 1 pass defense in college football. I probably don't think it's that, but I also don't think it's Notre Dame's pass defense from last season, where it was just a complete, absolute farce. I do think Oregon has a good pass defense. You're also looking here. We talked a little bit about USC last week, right? And USC defensively is quietly pretty much on track with exactly what they said they were going to be. So they've gone now to a middle of the road defense. They're in the 40s to 60s on really every single defensive category. Oregon is 8th in rushing yards per game, and they are number 1 in yards per rush. But they're in the 50s, high 52, low 50s in rush attempts per game. So essentially what that's telling you, and this is what we knew, in several of the games. Oregon has the most explosive rushing attack in the country. So that's why Iowa was posed such a good matchup for them, because Iowa allows the least amount of explosive runs per game in the country. USC is a little bit different. So you're actually better off at USC doing a little bit of what Illinois did to them earlier this year, where it's just like 3-yard run, 4-yard run, 5-yard run, 8-yard run, etc. But USC is susceptible to giving up an explosive run. It just isn't as much of their weakness as it is that, like, they can't do anything about it if you're just using 3 downs and getting a first down by running the ball. Oregon's not going to do that because that isn't how their offense works, and they're really not patient enough for it. But if Oregon breaks a couple of these long runs, that's going to be really hard for USC to overcome at that point. And I don't know if you're going to see this game go as a blowout per se. If Oregon breaks enough long runs, it will be a blowout. But I think they break a couple, maybe 3, and that's enough to give them a double-digit cover. Maybe like they win by 13, they win by 14. USC has made a lot more strides, I think, than people are willing to admit, who are like anti-USC people. Which there's a lot of those people out there. I kind of get it from my generation because of like how much people hated them in like the Reggie Bush, Matt Leinart era. But I mean, they were also fun to watch. So I don't really see why there's so much USC hate now, right? Because they're out in LA and they have so much money, and people don't like the teams with money. These are actually 2 like the most hated teams in college football right now from other fan bases, USC and Oregon. Probably USC, Oregon, Texas are all up there right now. If USC has a path here, it's because they have absolute freakazoids on the outside. Like, everybody's already given Jeremiah Smith the Biletnikoff Award, and that's fine. I don't really have an issue with it, but it should go to Mekhi Lemon. So that's a thing. He's been the best wide receiver in college football this year. I'm not saying I would draft him ahead of Jeremiah Smith if I was drafting wide receiver in the NFL. No, I wouldn't, because I'm not a moron. But he has been the best wide receiver in college football this year. They pose a threat on the outside that's even greater than what Indiana did. And Indiana gave Oregon fits a little bit in the pass game because of the outside wide receivers. And so that's That's why out of all the picks this week, this one took me kind of the longest. Was because I really had to get into what Lupoy did against Indiana, why it didn't work, and then what did I think he's going to do against USC. And I think they'll make enough changes to improve, but they're not going to be perfect. That's what I'm saying, that whole number one pass defense in the country. Oregon hasn't played anybody. Oregon's best win is Iowa. Like Oregon, Oregon hasn't played a team with a passing pulse outside of Indiana, and Indiana got them pretty good. Oregon as a team is a paper tiger. They are not. They're very, very similar to what they were last year when they got blown out by Ohio State, but they don't even have like an initial. I don't even think they're as good as they were last year, quite honestly. But in this specific game, it's going to be hard for USC to overcome a couple of things that Oregon does match up really well with them on. So Oregon minus 10 for 5 units. Morning, afternoon, early evening window, so the 7 p.m. window Eastern time. Pitt and Georgia Tech. Already gave this one 2. It's Pitt plus 3 for 3 units. I don't believe you can't get 3 at any of the major books right now. I don't believe you're going to be able to up until kickoff either. I think you're fine to take this one down to anything where Pitt is getting plus points. I think there's a very good chance that Pitt will, obviously if you can get the 3, you take the plus 3. But I think as long as you're getting Pitt plus 1, Pitt plus 1.5, Pitt plus 2, Pitt plus 2.5, you're fine to do it for 3 units. Pitt should win this game outright. It's a horrendous matchup for Georgia Tech. Pitt is one of the top passing attacks in college football, especially in the ACC, because we're not talking Pitt versus Notre Dame now. We're not talking talent level discrepancy that's just impossible to overcome. We're talking 2 ACC teams. And Pitt has like the 15th passing attack, like passing yards per game, and Georgia Tech's in the 100s on defense on that. The thing that Georgia Tech has to be able to do is run the ball off read option off Haynes King. Going into last week, Pitt had the number 1 rush defense in the country. Obviously that mark fell because Notre Dame showed you that it was fake, and it is fake to the extent of if you're comparing them to the national college football landscape. It's not fake when you're comparing them to the context of the ACC. I hate everything about this matchup for Georgia Tech. And a Georgia Tech team who has been teetering. Let's be honest. That people talk about bad teams, right? And they're like, oh, Clemson's a bad team because they underperformed. They maybe didn't meet expectations, but they're not a bad team. Boston College is a bad team. If you've watched Boston College play this year, they are comically bad. Georgia Tech needed a very much so last-second comeback against Boston College that they almost didn't get. They have gotten worse as the season has gone on, and I'm not necessarily surprised by that because of the style in which they play is so reliant on Haynes King, and it's so reliant on Haynes King playing just an absolutely unsustainable brand of football where he's going to get, if he isn't getting injured to where he's getting taken out of games, he's getting injured to where he's severely limited in terms of what he can do. And they have 2 paths here. Georgia Tech either goes the ACC championship game and wins it and goes in, and they're in, or they beat Georgia next weekend. That's either a 2-game winning streak. That's either 2 games won here, Pitt today, ACC championship game won, or 1 game won next week. They're not going to get all of them. They're just not going to get all of them. And this matchup here is a really, really tough one for them in this spot, especially with the Georgia game looming next week. So Pitt +3 units. You guys are fine to take it at anything that's Pitt plus points, because I don't think if you waited until today, I do not think you're going to get the 3. Maybe I'm wrong. But wait, I mean, because if it's at 2.5 right now at most places, so if you get it at 2, who gives a shit? Because that's a push. So you are better off waiting to see if you're able to get a 3 somehow. I don't see it. I don't see sharps letting that thing touch 3, because as soon as a book puts out a 3 there, they're going to get hammered by sharps with large bets. I mean, they're taking all the $10, $20, $30 bets right now on Georgia Tech, but as soon as one of those books hits 3, they're going to get $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 bets on Pitt. Okay, so then the last one, BYU and Cincinnati. At this point, it's a tradition. We have to fade BYU. So we're on Cincinnati +3 for 5 units. You can still get Cincinnati +3 for 5 units at several of the major books. Cincinnati should win outright. TCU should have won outright last week, though, and BYU blew them out. Utah should have beaten BYU, and BYU won and covered the reverse spread. So they covered by the amount that Utah was favored in the game. They have done everything right other than when they played Texas Tech, and we finally got our 10-unit fade BYU victory on that one. Even named the video, Texas Tech will blow out BYU. Cincinnati's at home. Cincinnati should win. This is a difficult matchup in many ways defensively for BYU. That hasn't mattered all year for BYU, quite honestly. If BYU wins this game, I can't remember what their last game is. I think it's like UCF at home. They're not losing that. If BYU goes 11-1, guys, they're going to the playoff. They're going to the playoff because they will be in the top 10 before championship Saturday, and unless their starting quarterback gets injured and they get blown out in the Big 12 championship game against Texas Tech, they're going to the playoff, which sucks, but it is what it is. I understand if you guys don't want to take this one because you're like, I just don't want to step in front of this train that is BYU, that is rolling right now. You got a lot of 24 to 25 year olds that are never going to play on Sundays, but in the context of college football in the Big 12, they're doing quite well. I think they'll be in for a rude awakening when they play an SEC or a Big 10 team, or even if they were to play Miami or Notre Dame. But that's not who they're playing this week. They're playing Cincinnati. So I think you're good to take it down to anything Cincinnati plus points. My model says this line should be a pick'em. Most models say this line should be a pick'em, or it's wrong team favored, and Cincy should be favored. Cincinnati should win this game, being at home. With BYU, it hasn't mattered all year. So we go off models, we go off all that stuff here. We don't bet with emotion. So Cincinnati +3, 5 units. I understand if you say I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. Fair. Okay, that's it for College Football Saturday. We'll be back at you again tomorrow with NFL Sunday. We've picked every game except for like 2 or 3, and we'll add those tomorrow. Still monitoring a few things in terms of line movement and injuries. Outside of that, have a great day. Enjoy your College Football Saturday. Perfect fall weather today across most of the country. And let's go Tigers, Ducks, Panthers. Pittsburgh Panthers, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. And since Bearcats. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.